I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Carl Schmidt is an assistant professor of computer science at Trinity Christian College. Dr. Schmidt's research interests include data science education, human-computer interaction, and visual analytics. Dr. Schmidt is also actively involved in promoting data science education and outreach, as in the workshop, Data for Good for Education. John McMullen is the executive director of the Midwest Big Data Innovation Hub, a collaborative network of stakeholders from academia, industry, and government focused on advancing data-driven research and innovation in the Midwest. With over 2 decades of experience in the technology industry, he has been a strong advocate for technology education, serving as a mentor and advisor to students pursuing careers in technology. In his current role, Dr. McMullen works to promote data literacy and advance data-driven innovation across the Midwest through a variety of programs and initiatives. And J.D. Graham, who is the Outreach and Engagement Specialist for the Midwest Big Data Innovation Hub. Mr. Graham leads the development and implementation of MBDH's strategic initiatives, partnerships, and outreach efforts. He has extensive experience in designing and delivering training and professional development programs for diverse audiences, ranging from undergraduate students to industry professionals. So thank you for joining us today, and we are going to learn about the Midwest Big Data Innovation Hub.
Great, thanks very much, Lily, and thanks to you all for joining today. It's great to have a chance to speak with you. I think the plan that we have for today is for me to get things going with a little background on who we are and what we do. And then I will turn it over to Carl and JD to talk about this workshop that is coming up real soon that we would like to share with your audience and your community. Then I'll come back and wrap things up a little bit on our end and open it up for a good Q&A with you all. Really excited to talk with you about the work that you do. We've had some time to look through the programs that you run and the work that you do on your website, and so very excited to hear more about that from you as well. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Please let me know if you are able to see that.
Yes, looks good.
All right, perfect. So yes, I am John McMullen, Executive Director of the Midwest Big Data Innovation Hub, which we call the MBDH. There we go. We are part of a national network of 4 data innovation hubs funded by NSF since about 2015. Since you all are primarily in Colorado, that means that you are within the West Hub region. Don't know if you have had any prior engagement with those folks, but I definitely would encourage you to reach out to them after our discussion today if what you hear from us is of interest. They do some similar programs and activities and would love to talk with you about the work that you do as well. They do a lot of data science education work, but also are focused on some climate resilience and water-related issues as well. And so I do feel like there's some good synergy between the 2 hubs in that space and with you all as well. But regardless of where you are listening from today, there is if you're in the US at least, there is a hub within your geographic area. And so that invitation holds for anybody on the call. We'd all be happy to talk with you. What we generally do is try to help build communities that are interested in data and data science, primarily with academia, folks who are doing different kinds of scientific research that involves data to some extent. But we do work with industry, government, and nonprofits as well. So it's really a cross-sector, cross-country initiative to build those communities that are focused on data and help move those forward. So within the Midwest, we are focused on a few theme areas that are based upon the regional strengths and community interests that we have in our 12-state region. So, obviously being in the Midwest, that's things like agriculture, water quality, manufacturing, but really more broadly than that, we're interested in the impact of these areas on communities, in particular the data impacts, but more broadly than that, the climate impacts and how communities can be resilient to climate change and other changes in the environmental world. And so, again, very interested to hear your thoughts about how those factors are driving the work that you do. Across those 5 theme areas, we do have a couple of cross-cutting themes that really apply to all of those. And so data science education is one of those. We'll be talking more about that today with the workshop and the other activities that we engage in. But we're focused on bringing students into the data science world as early as we can get them. That includes going down to the high school level and encouraging students who may be on the fence about STEM careers. What are some of the benefits of working within the data space? But really continuing that through into retraining, career development in other spaces as well. So that spans a pretty wide age range that we're focused on. And we also do have interest in cyber infrastructure. And so, what are the underlying information technology resources that are driving scientific research and data management, other data related activities. So we can talk today about data sharing, for example, in the earth and environmental science spaces. What does that look like for you? What are some of the challenges maybe that you're facing in that space? So, historically, as I said, we have worked in this area since 2015. And so a lot of these communities are pretty mature at this point. And so what we're trying to focus on over the next year or so going forward is how do we learn from what these individual communities have developed and created in the past few years? Where are there some opportunities for convergence of those activities? Where can we learn from what has worked well in the ag space and the water space and move that into other areas? And in particular, look for opportunities around climate resilience. That's really the overarching theme that we're sort of coalescing around and trying to move forward on. So our sort of business model has been really building on the NSF awards that we have received and looking forward for sustainability, thinking about how we can leverage this experience that we've had in building communities. How can we take that forward into new spaces like climate resilience, where there may be opportunities to help continue building cross-sector collaborations, interdisciplinary activities that are new to folks. And so we have a set of services that we can offer as a funded partner on new activities. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but if there are folks who are interested in thinking through how to offer these kinds of collaborative services as a part of a new award, we'd be happy to talk with you about that offline. What we currently do is a number of different programmatic activities, and so we'll talk a little about some of these today, primarily around education, but again, it's around building communities, building capacity for new collaborations, new ways for folks to work together in places where that has not historically been the case. This could be across scientific disciplines where there hasn't been a lot of engagement previously. It could be across sectors where there's opportunities for nonprofits to work with academia or with industry partners to collaborate on different projects. And so really functioning as that glue between different groups of people, different individuals, and different sectors to try to bring together folks who haven't worked before and explore new areas together. So we do that in a variety of different ways. We have One of our flagship activities is the Collaboration Cafe, which is a monthly webinar series to look at some of those opportunities through the lens of funding opportunities from federal agencies. So we typically have program directors from different agencies on to help us understand what the goals for a new program are and how our community may be able to partner together on those opportunities. But that extends also to education and training, as I mentioned. And so, for example, the Midwest Carpentries community is a way for us to help build capacity for data science hands-on instruction in the region through the Carpentries mechanism. Happy to expand on that if folks are not familiar with the Carpentries, but that is a global organization focused on data science training along with other software development as well. So we are a member organization of that group, and we have a monthly community meeting there along with other training opportunities as well. Likewise, I said we have other student activities. So we have a student community that we lead in the Midwest, which has a webinar series associated with it. And as of this year, we are also co-leading the Midwest chapter of the National Student Data Corps, which is a new organization developed by our partners at the Northeast Big Data Hub. Really has taken off quite a bit in the past year, and they have chapters across the country and internationally now as well, really focused on helping students be peer mentors to each other and grow their skills in different ways. There's resources available for instructors and for students as well. And so it's quite a rich environment, and we're happy to be helping to lead that Midwest chapter with them this year. We have a science communication intern program in the Midwest where we do some mentoring with students and help them build their scientific communication skills and do some really interesting storytelling about the work that's happening in the Midwest around data innovations. And so we'd be happy to talk more with you about how that works. I saw on your list of past seminars that you had someone talking about storytelling in science previously. So definitely very interested in that from our side as well. We do a lot with water, so you'll hear more about that from us today as well, but we do partner with a couple of other groups on a series called the Water Data Forum, which has been around for a couple of years. And this is another cross-sector series where we're bringing together folks from different groups and organizations to focus on data in the water space and explore what some of those challenges and opportunities are. So that may be a place where there's some interest from your side in exploring that series and potentially participating as a panelist or a moderator there. We have talked about climate resilience and natural hazards mitigation, topics like that previously. And so this is a moderated panel format. So we have really good discussions and in-depth conversations about these challenges and opportunities. So would definitely be interested in talking with you all about opportunities to have you engage there as well. And then the final program that I'll mention is our Community Development and Engagement Program. This is a way that we can fund new initiatives that are incubating new kinds of activities in data science in relation to our theme areas. And so again, in the water area, we're looking for new partners, particularly non-R1 colleges and universities for water data kinds of activities over the next year. And so again, happy to talk with folks offline about opportunities there. But more broadly, that program has really enabled us to get a number of initiatives off the ground that are sort of too small for a federal agency proposal, but a little too big for, you know, let's say a faculty member to take on their own without some support. And so we're sort of in that middle ground where we can help facilitate these activities, provide a little bit of seed funding to get them off the ground, and really help folks think about long-term sustainability of those activities. And so really happy to have our partner Carl Schmidt on the line with us today as well, to talk about a workshop that we developed as a part of that CDE program. We're calling it the Workshop on Data for Good in Education. And this will take place at the beginning of June in Palos Heights, Illinois, which is just outside of Chicago. This is the campus of Trinity Christian College. And so we will have this as an in-person meeting with some online components to it as well. And so at this point, Carl, I think I will turn it over to you. I believe you have some slides, so I will stop sharing here so that you can share your screen when you're ready.
Sure. So let me share my screen. Let me actually present. So I'm going to start a little bit earlier in the thinking process, because when I read the prompts for the seminar, part of it is inspire collaboration and think about new sort of ways of tackling data science or other things like that. And so part of what I want to give you is a little bit more of the big giant ecosystem scope picture of why I worked with John in the Midwest Hub to try to develop this workshop. And what I'm hoping in the future will be I'm hoping we'll see it turn into an annual workshop, and we'll see what the numbers look like and whether we can kind of keep doing this and find funding. So this is coming from a perspective and a question of saying, how can we have scalable impacts through the process of doing our data science education, and in particular, scalable impacts in social good or in social perspectives in terms of our communities and other things, which I think is very integral to the whole perspective of environmental education, right? The reason we look at environmental studies and think about our environment and perspectives is that we want to be providing long-term socially sustainable engagement with our environment, and how we maintain it, how we look at it, how we analyze it, and how we think about it. So the workshop sort of is spun out of the idea that there simply aren't enough data practitioners out there for most of the social good organizations or social, nonprofits, other organizations out there to actually hire the staffing or hire the data practitioners that they would like to have to do the work that they could. And even beyond that, there's simply way more projects out there than even if there were organizations that were looking to hire it. There's a lot more value that can be put into many organizations by recognizing and building up what is going on as data has become such an integral part of our society and academia and science, as we look at improving processes, improving actions, improving decisions, etc. And so the question becomes, if there's just not enough people out there doing it, how can we provide value and impact out there in more ways when we want to have this value, we want to have this impact? We think that there's organizations out there that have potential to do more. How can we do something more with that? So the workshop then sort of came out of this perspective that I have sort of been trying to drive in different ways and in different places in our general data science ecosystem in the country, and asking questions around how can we be building out a paradigm around data science education that actually serves society as part of that learning process, that educational process where we are educating students to do data science. So I believe that many of the people on this call are educators that are either learning about data, or either students that are learning about data science, or educators that are educating those students that are learning about data science, or potentially researchers, practitioners that are working with this space, particularly in the environmental world. And so I believe that it is possible for us to take those skills and that perspective and looking to do that educational process and actually have an impact in not just post-graduation when we go out and get a job as a practitioner, or just in the actual research funded projects we have, but I believe that there's a way that we might be able to rethink and create a standard of the process of our data science education, such that the work that we do as we educate students and educate ourselves actually has an impact itself. To achieve that, though, there's a couple of challenges, and I'm going to focus on just sort of the last two in this, which is that there is a gap between the practices that many faculty members and have in terms of translating products that students produce in the learning process into things that actually have impact or lasting impact in particular. And then there's also a hurdle in the sense that many educators might choose or value this, but see it as a zero-sum game that says, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to lose out on the educational process, or I'm going to have to stop having my students learn some kind of important key content or perspective in the process. And so I want to sort of hit that a little bit, and then we'll end up getting to the why we have a workshop at the end of this. So this is just sort of the challenge in this idea of turning products, learning products into change, is that many times, and a lot of this is anecdotal, but I've seen some reports out there on this, projects that are done inside classrooms, projects that are often done as student undergraduate projects or independent projects, or even graduate study projects, can be very challenging for organizations that have sponsored them to actually integrate and use. And so one of the things that the Hub is really focused on in general is sort of moving beyond this, right? Like the Hub works closely with academic and non-academic partners to make sure that the projects that are going on have some kind of value and impact out to those external partners. And there are obviously plenty of organizations out there that make a business model of doing consulting. But somewhere in this process, there is a challenge for educators to actually be facilitating this process. And I think you can think of this in the same context that in academia, in pure research labs, there is a lot of research that it furthers raw science, but doesn't always necessarily then immediately translate out into practical applications. Ideally, long-term, the pure science and advancement of science will progress out to practical applications, but sometimes there's a giant gap. I've heard it said in mathematics that there's something like a 50 to 100-year gap between new mathematics that are discovered and figured out, and when oftentimes the sciences or business says, oh, we needed that math that people figured out 100 years ago to do the thing that we're doing now. I think everyone would love to see there be a shorter window between the discovery and the actual application. What I've shown up here is two examples from my own student projects of things that have been actual translated impact projects that students have done to say that it is possible to do this. And I hope that there are everyone on this call hopefully can think of either a project they've participated in or maybe heard about or something. So on the left is this network discovery visualization. It's work I did with a colleague at the Naval Postgraduate School and over several summers with undergraduate researchers. And the visualization tool that you see pictured here is something that then was produced out for people that are in three-letter organizations to make use of thinking about how they're exploring dark networks and exploring communication networks to do security issues. On the right is a screenshot from a student paper that was actually produced for the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission, and they were analyzing a national database of traffic usage on some major highways in Indiana, and we're reporting that out to the Regional Planning Commission that then produced reports for Indiana state government on funding and deciding initiatives around how highways needed to be updated and changed. And in fact, as I'm thinking and looking at this, I'm probably living the impact of this report as giant swaths of the highways that I drive to campus on a regular basis are under construction yet again. So these projects had impact. And I think that there's a challenge, though, getting this to happen regularly. So in my research, what I would like to see develop, and so this is where I sort of push this out as inspiring collaboration and thinking about, I think there's a whole bunch of questions that can be researched around how to do this better and make it more easily successful for people that are doing new projects people that are looking for funding, or things that are incorporated into grant projects or just research projects or classrooms. In particular, I think that there needs to be a real understanding in the data world, right, of what tasks happen and what tasks have to always happen in a data project that work or can be sourced out to students in different ways. I also think that there's a gap, and there are some people working on this about platforms for onboarding social good organizations, or really connecting projects and data problems out to students that they can then work on them. I also think that there is sort of this miss on concrete information about how to have product delivery, in particular, sort of translating from business and industry practices into academia practices around student projects, etc. So there are organizations out there that are successful on these sorts of product delivery, but it's not really incorporated, in my experience, in most academic settings in which projects, even with external clients that are brought in, are actually then executed. So the next piece that I want to talk about is this idea that it's a zero-sum game. And I think that that's a misperception of many faculty, that the idea of an inclusion of social impact or good from the work that they are doing in the classroom and the teaching process has to be a zero-sum game that says, oh, well, we have to dedicate time to projects. I have to dedicate time from my classrooms in terms of raw content that I want to cover, so that we can achieve these sorts of impacts out in our projects or goals. And I think that's just it's a cop-out, as opposed to actually looking and saying, how can I do things that I'm doing in a different way that has equal value and impact on the learning, but then also has impact in other places. I put up here a couple of different examples, 2 programs that I've worked out and developed. My previous institution, Valparaiso University, really built out. In fact, the project, the Northwest Planning project I presented, came out of an introductory level data science class, where students were doing a project as part of their intro class, and they were learning the process of doing data science as they went. At Trinity, we've taken sort of a different spin on it, but working on sort of the same principles that says we want to be incorporating this social good aspect throughout their educational curriculum as the mechanism by which they are actually learning data science. I put NCWIT up there as sort of a partial motivator from earlier in my career that said one of the best ways to actually engage underrepresented groups, specifically women, but also minorities of any sort, is by bringing in real world impact into your classrooms, especially the introductory classes and things like this. So this idea that we want to have real impact and we want to have real meaningful projects means that not only are we able to increase the impact from our classes, we're actually able to do a better job of broadening participation in our classes and maintaining a broad, diverse community as we go. So that whole idea right there from NCWIT around how do we successfully support broader participation in computing fields, and their work is specifically in information technology, but most of the studies have shown that it's translational across whatever technical discipline you want to talk about, whether you're talking about engineering or data science or other things like this. So there's also a movement within the computer science, more pure computer science, called responsible computing, which is all built around this idea of reimagining how we teach computing topics. And this gets us to now sort of motivating and driving what we built out for the workshop, and why I believe that there's a real need for us to continue this workshop in future years as we develop these skills. What I presented on sort of those earlier slides really talked about this deep lack or deep mismatch in the skills that educators have if we really want to see impact propagate out. And so the workshop is sort of my vision for equipping faculty and educators to do better with this. I think that there's a lot of interest, and JD will hopefully tell me all the great numbers of our enrollment in a moment about where our actual engagement already is for this workshop. But what we've done with the workshop is we've moved into bringing in faculty, bringing in speakers of people that have been successful at doing some of this, so that we can help train educators in the practice of doing. So we're bringing in two speakers, Dr. Dharma Daly from the eScience Institute at University of Washington. She's spent years working with their data science for social good initiative, particularly at the graduate level. But her, in particular, talking about project scoping. And so when we think about these engagements with external clients or in our classrooms and thinking about having sponsored projects or working with business, et cetera, if we want to have successful learning for our students, but also successful projects, we have to be really careful about how we scope those projects. We have to say, can we achieve the things that they want, that the partner wants, but also have we tailored the things that we are getting as a project in a way that is supporting of the student learning. Our other speaker is Dr. Richard Blumenthal, who's at Regis University. He's been a leader in the responsible computing movement in computer science, and so he's presented at several different places on how to take individual classroom content and re-envision teaching that in a different way that provides socially responsible context. And he is hopefully coming in for us so Dr. Daly is looking at the very big scope and saying, how do we bring in projects and manage that so that it aligns with our student objectives? Dr. Blumenthal is coming in and looking much more at the narrow side that says, it's not just a big redesign and saying, bring in more projects or things like that, but there's actually ways of redesigning and rethinking the ways that we interact on a day-to-day basis in our classroom with our students so that we can have social impact and support the idea of social good long-term for success. Yeah, and then I want to, in addition, I want to point out very clearly that this is not a conference to come and just listen to people talking about stuff. So I'm going to get out of the slide and show you the agenda real briefly. Oh, except for I will share again. Hang on a moment. Let me share. Okay. So, what we've got for our agenda is very intentionally, we only have 2 sessions where there is talking, really. We've got an opening plenary from Dr. Daly, and then on Saturday, we've got another plan for a plenary talk around noon. The rest of the time in our 2 days or day and a half is all scheduled around workshop sessions and networking sessions and work sessions. So the intent here really is that if you come as an educator, you're getting an opportunity to listen, hear, and be guided in doing, so that as you leave this workshop, you're going to be more prepared to do something back in your classroom when you leave. Hopefully we'll get a chance to hear in our marketplace ideas of people that have already done something successful and they're there to learn some other tools or skill sets. We've also got a networking session where we're hoping people will be able to do much like what you're looking for from the seminar, which is inspire collaboration and think about this. So I guess that will, I'll sort of pause there. I don't know if JD has some other things to talk about. There's certainly some logistic things that are exciting about the workshop in terms of it's free. And I would love to answer any questions around sort of the perspective or where and why we're sort of talking about this here.
Thank you, Carl. I think that was a great overview. I really have nothing more to add from what you've got there. It is a really special way that you have connected so many different types of people and different types of organizations that are interested in doing this type of work, because it's not just one type of institution that is going to be able to use this and engage students. It's really a very broad net. So in that saying, we have people signed up from across the Midwest. We have them in R1 institutions, community colleges. We even have some high school teachers interested in being able to do this type of work. So I see this not being a narrow little slice of what few people can do. I see this being applicable in a huge way, whether it's using data science, which is obviously what we want to be able to do, but in many different types of programs where we want to engage students and have actual good done, and for them to want to use what they're learning, not just learning to learn.
Thank you. I hope so. I think you're right, John or JD, that there's a lot of interest in a lot of different directions about how to get some of these things into the classroom and skill sets. So does anyone have questions, or would they like more information about any of this? Or I don't know if John has more to talk about too, so.
Yeah, I do have a little bit more to go through. I don't see any questions in the chat at the moment, but definitely feel free to post those up, and we will have some time for Q&A in a moment here. But just wanted to reinforce that one of the reasons that we saw this as a really valuable opportunity for the hub to invest in was that we have that shared goal with Carl of building long-term capacity for educators to improve how they use these kinds of activities in the classroom. And so this is a workshop that we're going to run for a day and a half, but we do expect that it will have some longer term impacts, and that we'll have outputs from the workshop that we can share with educators and attempt to reproduce this workshop going forward as well. So we do have plans to have this be a long-term impact on the data science education profession. So really glad to be partnering with Carl and other folks on this opportunity. All right, I will go back to my slides and just wrap up the final couple of comments that I wanted to make before we get into discussion. Wanted to share a little bit about some of the partners that we have, beyond Carl and Trinity in some of the spaces that you all may be working in as well. And so we can have some discussion later about are there opportunities for the folks who you work with maybe to work with us. How can we help support you in different ways? The West Hub I mentioned is another potential partner as well. So I'll just mention a couple of these projects. We have worked with the Midwest Climate Collaborative on another community development and engagement project in the past few months. They are a regional network in the Midwest that covers the same 12 states that we do, really building the same kinds of collaborations that we do, but really focused on the climate space, particularly around local government, implementation of regulations, and working with communities on climate impacts. And so with them, we developed a platform called the Climate Resource Network, which is a website and an app for regional resources that folks can learn from and use, but it really also is a community of people who are working in a similar space with each other and helping to build that community of practice amongst those people. There's a number of NSF-funded projects below that here on the slide that I'll just mention briefly. These are all related to data science and data, but with some kind of environmental dimension or climate dimension to them. So for example, the iGuide project based here at the University of Illinois is really focused on geospatial data in the environmental space. The Blue Gap project is another NSF project funded through their Convergence Accelerator program. So really trying to rapidly build this network of researchers and practitioners around nitrogen pollution mitigation from the upper Mississippi River Basin area down to the Florida Gulf. What are some of the ways to address those challenges and remediate some of those problems? Icicle, which is based out of the Ohio State University, is one of the NSF AI institutes. There's I believe 19 of those currently, with a few more announced soon. But again, building infrastructure to support research and learning around environmental issues. Similar to that, also at OSU is the new Imageomics Institute, which is one of the HDR institutes that NSF funded. This is looking more at image data rather than quantitative data from instruments, but looking at images of organisms, trying to do some machine learning and other classification of those using different biological traits. And so pretty interesting ecosystem, even just in that one particular segment of our communities, using data in very different ways, trying to bring together different partners to collaborate together. So lots of interesting stuff happening over in our region. We'd love to hear from you today about other projects that may be happening in Colorado and elsewhere in the West, that where there may be some synergies, some overlap that we could talk about. And just finally, I want to wrap up with some upcoming events that we're having that may be of interest to your community. We have a couple of sessions on cyber infrastructure as a part of our Collaboration Cafe series, one starting tomorrow, and then another one in May, looking at different solicitations from NSF for cyber infrastructure around research data management. This is really a great venue for having those conversations about new collaborations across institutions to build, in this case, a new infrastructure for research. So definitely would encourage folks on this call who are interested in either of those programs or have folks in your network who may be, feel free to join those webinars. You don't have to be in the Midwest to participate in those. We're always happy to have other folks joining that as well. And then our next Midwest Carpentries Community call will be at the end of May. That's the last Monday of every month, where we talk about hands-on training for data science using the Carpentries approach. And so we'll have our call in May coming up for that as well. I still did not see any questions in the chat, and so I did have a couple of conversation starter questions for you all as we move into open Q&A at this point. I think we still do have a couple of minutes left. Just thinking about, you obviously have a data science education lens that you're using with this group and the environmental data piece. So if you'd like to talk about some of the data challenges that you all are facing in those spaces, we'd be happy to talk through that with you. And then, you know, data science education, we're really interested in the work that you all are doing with the earthdatascience.org site that you have. That was very interesting to explore. So would love to hear about how you're engaging with students there. Can students outside of environmental science participate in some of those activities? It'd be great to hear about that from you as well. So I'll stop sharing here so that we can all see each other, but what kinds of questions and comments do you all have at this point?
I just wanted to thank you all for joining us today. I'm a postdoc at EarthLab, but I actually live in the Midwest, so this is really topical to me. I'm a tribal college graduate and former adjunct instructor at a tribal college, and I'm interested to learn if you have any tribal collaborations that you're working on, since there are so many Indigenous communities in our region.
Absolutely, yeah. In the Midwest, in particular, there is a significant percentage of all the TCUs are in that geographic region, and so it's an audience that we're very interested in helping to collaborate with, build equal partnerships with other groups that would benefit the TCU communities. And so, yes, we do have a couple of existing activities that I can mention quickly. So the Tribal Nations Research Group, which is based in North Dakota, we have worked with them for a couple of years now on hands-on training, so using the data carpentries approach to do training on the reservation for skill development for adults, so workforce development kinds of activities. But we are holding a workshop with them later this year at one of the large tribal meetings that is focused on agriculture topics, so data in agriculture, some of the digital ag work that has been done, and some of the interests that tribes have about building capacity on the reservations for innovative ag practices that use remote sensing, that reuse other kinds of instruments for data collection to work on precision ag and build that kind of approach to efficiency in ag. So that's a workshop that's coming up. It won't be public. It's only for TCU faculty, administrators, and tribal government representatives. But we're excited to partner again with them on that.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like Sarah has a question. Feel free to unmute and ask that if you would like.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Sarah. I was based in CU for a bit as a postdoc, and then I came across to MU, the University of Missouri, as another postdoc fellow. And the work that I've done here as a PhD student, I use data from Columbia, Missouri, the Midwest, to forecast wind speeds at tall tower heights. So what we did is that we looked at different machine learning techniques and techniques in chaos theory to forecast what are tall tower wind tower heights, wind speeds at tall tower heights. And we got like significant results using the AI technologies compared to using conventional statistical linear technologies. And what we would like to do now is probably look at energy poverty within the Midwest and possibly like Missouri, and use probably AI techniques in forecasting that. So can you suggest if there's any data sources that I could tap into, and any points of collaboration as well?
Yeah, absolutely happy to do that, and it might be best to do that offline, but I will make a quick note that we are not a data aggregator, despite our name. We don't collect data or provide access to it directly, but we are able to help folks make connections with data producers, data providers, and other data resources. So we're always happy to have those conversations. In your case, what kind of data are we talking about? I think I heard you say energy. So is this, about capacity? Is it about production? What sort of data are you thinking for?
I'm looking at both production as well as social data and economic data. So I'm bringing in the social sphere as well as the data science and the renewable energy. I'm trying to link all three spheres.
Very interesting. Yeah, I've seen more of that kind of work where people are taking data from different subsectors and trying to combine them in interesting ways and learn new things. So that's very exciting. So we definitely would like to talk with you more, and so feel free to reach out to us, and we can get you connected with the folks that we are aware of in the Midwest.
Thank you so much.
Looks like we have a couple questions from folks in the room here. I'll start with come on. Okay.
Hi, thanks for the talk. This is more, I guess, of an introduction than anything else. I'm working on our education team here, and I'm involved slash spearheading all of the kind of new Earth data science.org curriculum and maintaining that. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And so of course available for anyone. We do try to gear the curriculum towards applications in Earth science, but some of our more popular pages are some of the like basic getting started with Python pages as well. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah, we would be happy to talk more with you about that project. It looks like a very rich set of resources that you have. And so we have a student webinar that we produce to help students understand what some of those opportunities look like. So that may be an opportunity for us to talk further about having you as a guest on that series. There also is a data science resource repository that our Northeast Hub partners have created that I can share with you that has a lot of resources for students and for faculty that may be of interest to you as well. So happy to talk about that more. I put my email in the chat just now for you and for other folks who would like to engage with us. Always happy to follow up after the call.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Love to talk.
Anybody else? One more? One more.
All right. Thanks again for the great talk. I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit more about specifics about the Midwest. So I know you said agriculture and sort of workforce development for the Rust Belt. Can you expand a little bit about the specific data sets that sort of resonate with the Midwest and why, and just dig into that a little bit more for me?
Sure, yeah, and I understand that this webinar series is usually a more technical call, and so I apologize that we don't have a lot of detailed data on data sets and things like that today, but I'll say in general, what we have seen is a pretty broad range of interests. And so, looking at our priority areas, it does range from health to ag to manufacturing to other things. And so there's obviously a huge amount of opportunity for data collection and use in those spaces. I think what we have seen, though, as I mentioned, is an interest in how those converge around climate resilience and natural hazard response, which is one of the reasons that we were very interested in talking with this group, is to get a better sense of what you have seen as people are exploring those spaces. And so, I think from our side, we have a lot of sensor related data. So sensors from on-farm ag work, from water related activities that could be utilities that are having sensor networks to deal with drinking water, wastewater, surveillance, all those kinds of activities. That gets into public health, for example, so data sets around disease outbreaks and other public health issues. So, it really does span a pretty wide range of real world data, data about natural events and the natural world, as opposed to, laboratory data in physics, for example. So we do have material science folks who are doing that kind of work, but I think where we have seen the most demand is really in the environmental sciences, natural world kind of spaces where there's climate data of different kinds. Could be images, could be from sensors, it could be around different landscape features, but there's some sort of natural data that is of interest to folks across disciplines. And so those challenges of trying to build data resources that are shareable on the one hand, the data is actually accessible and available for people to use, but then integrating different kinds of data that maybe they do have metadata associated with them, but those metadata don't necessarily align across those different disciplines. And so some of those classic data challenges around collecting, curating, making data available in ways that cross disciplinary boundaries, those are some of the challenges that we have seen historically from folks. And so I think those are some of the issues as we get into the climate space where, there's multiple hazards, there's multiple data streams. How do we integrate those so that decision makers can use those for mitigation and adaptation issues? So I know we're running out of time here, but that's sort of the high level of where I see some of those technical issues.
other questions, comments? Jennifer, do you want to say anything? About ESOL?
Sure. I know we only have 4 minutes left, but yeah, sure. So hi, John. Thank you. And Carl, thank you. I'm Jennifer Balch. I'm the director of ESOL, which is the Environmental Data Science Innovation and Inclusion Lab, which is NSF's newest data synthesis center for environmental sciences. And I put a link in the chat in case there's interest also in some of our activities as well. So we're hosting a summit in May. We'll be hosting hackathons, working groups that could also circle around education in data science as well. So we'll have opportunities as well. I see lots of connection points with the big data hubs, which is great. So thank you for taking the time to share with us what you're doing. And I'll also mention one more that I don't think we called out yet specifically, but NSF funded an Earth Data Science Core program, which we worked with Oglala Lakota College, United Tribes Technical College, Metro State Denver, and Front Range Community College with 60 students and 8 faculty across those institutions to support their data-driven projects over 3 different summers. It's fully online because of COVID, but that ended up being a great way to be able to connect with students and faculty. And that program we're going to be continuing under the ESOL banner, and it just kicked off in March with the next set of student-driven projects and faculty interests. So there's a lot of opportunities there to learn and share ideas from that model. It's a great model for supporting students and developing curriculum for non-R1 or for tribal colleges and MSIs that want to pursue building out data science skills and environmental applications. So thank you for joining us, and I see lots of potential connections, and I hope we're able to, have our ships join in the journey at some point, and just encourage our team to reach out to you all and vice versa. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. And it's good to meet you. I was actually had a conversation with Alicia Kroll, who used to work with Neon, about ESOL recently. And so I'm glad to know that you're affiliated with that. We'll definitely want to have that conversation. But I'm sure you know the folks from Neon and from EarthCube, some of the other people that we have worked with historically as well.
Yeah, it's great. There's so much demand for data science skills and capabilities and cyber infrastructure that it's great if we can coordinate a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We love the folks at Neon. They're just spitting distance from us here, actually. So yeah, there's lots of connection points.
Very good. We will definitely follow up. Any last questions? I know that we're out of time at this point. Definitely feel to reach out to us if you would like, and if you know folks who may be interested in our activities, feel free to share this talk with them. We'd be happy to talk with them too. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.